it comes to the protest that is ongoing because of cash, that is money in the pocket, and people are gagging for it. The civil servants as well, they have threatened to be downing the tools if that contentious issue of the contractual obligations as far as maybe contractual employment is concerned, as opposed to pension or permanent and pensionable employment. We shall be looking at that with our panelists this morning. In the raft of other issues, I'm joined this morning by Dr. Hassan Kanenje, who is the director of the Horn Institute of Strategic Studies. Also, we'll be joined by Dr. Ken Mbongi, who is a historian at the University of Nairobi. We'll be joined as well this morning by Peter Kagwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute, and we'll be joined as well this morning by Professor Nomi Damba, who is a foreign and defense expert, to just analyze what is happening so far. But let's see how the weather will be today. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of the dailies today. Right, horrors of family members wiped out. Horrors of family members wiped out is what is headlining the front page of a Standard today. And you can see the devastation there. Look at that car that was carried away by the floods. And the wreckage is left there. Some whippy-teary faces. The stark reality of the full impact and the deadly devastation of the Mai Mahiu flooding tragedy came home painfully yesterday when families began identifying bodies of fallen kin. With more than 70 still missing, the death toll hit 48, with one family, that of Tabitha Wanja, losing 8 members to the disaster. 8 members to the disaster. And you have the story on page 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the Standard today. And a distraught Susan Omaida, who lost 8 family members, narrates Monday morning. The Monday morning's ordeal. You can see also a woman is assisted after being overwhelmed following the recovery of a body during a search and rescue mission at Kamusira village yesterday. The death toll of the Mai Mahiu floods hit 48 yesterday, with over 70 still missing. And all this is tucked away inside the Daily today. Also, former Governor Wairia in the dock of alleged graft. This is on page 2 of the Standard. You have also the Enterprise magazine coming in handy for you. Get all the wiser as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. Of kamikazes and cleansing, National Pages is carrying out this story on page 3 of today's publication. And super rich investors bet on Kenya. We have 17 there. That is a business page where we have almost 29 betting company who are still registering in the country, despite the fact, of course, of the taxes that is targeting them. That is how the Standard is looking today. We head over to the Daily Nation. Those we lost is the splash. Tragedy. Everyone is mourning here. The residents of Jerusalem and Kamushira villages in Mai Mahiu have lost relatives, friends, and neighbors who were among 48 victims of a devastating deluge that came down in the wee hours of Monday. One family is living the horror and pain of losing 4 members. And this story is well covered for you on page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of today's Daily Nation. And you can see President William Ruto with Nakuru Governor Susan Kihika and other leaders yesterday at the scene of the Monday tragedy in Mai Mahiu, Nakuru County. Dr. Ruto directed the military to join in such efforts and assured the affected families of support by the government. We'll give you the gritty details of this story also in our news bulletin this morning. And looking at the flag on top here, floods havoc. President gives people living in areas prone to floods, landslide 48 hours to move out. And also looking at the teaser, the notorious job on the line as Wetangula gives the nod to impeachment motion. Agriculture CS is facing the sack of fake fertilizer saga. Will he survive? That is the abiding question. You have a story on page 12 of the Daily Nation. On the sidebar, Labor Day, not a reprieve for workers amid strife, thinning pay. A teacher who earned a monthly salary of 56,092 shillings in 2020 was earning 51,475 by 2022. While a county worker who earned 72,044 shillings in 2018 took home a monthly salary of 58,399 in 2022. These are not abstract figures. It is the reality for the two categories of workers and the representatives of, or a representation of a general state of Kenyan workers. Their lives continue to get harder with increasing taxes and levies amid a rising cost of living as the world commemorates Labor Day today. You have a story on page 10 of the Daily Nation. Courts were charged with 351 million fraud, that is million shillings fraud. That is former Muranga governor. You can follow the story on page 8 of the Daily Nation. Defense Ministry spent 38 million shillings to clean KICC windows and pavements. The Defense Ministry spent 38 million shillings to clean the paving and that is the paving and the windows at the Kenyatta International Convention Center ahead of the African Climate Change Conference in September last year. The National Assembly's Committee on Tourism and Wildlife had this yesterday. Another story on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Those windows had better be squeaky clean if that is a tidy sum of money went actually in cleaning the cabros and the windows as well. This is the Daily Nation. You can grab a copy and follow that story as well. The Star. Dad, help! A child's plea as floods swept a village. That is what is the splash today. Mai Mahiu survivors say they watched helplessly as loved ones and livelihoods washed away. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the Star. 169 and counting deaths recorded in Nairobi, Homa Bay, West Pokot, Tana River counties. And you can see also a related picture there. The president standing in solidarity with affected victims there who have been displaced by the torrential rains, the floods. Grim tells Tabitha Wanja, who lost 8 family members, in tears as she narrates her ordeal. President William Ruto condoles with Mai Mahiu flood survivors in Nakuru County yesterday. And you can see residents also clearing debris after flash floods swept through Mai Mahiu. All right, Mombasa father worried about 24-year-old son abducted 2 years ago and met warnings of heavy rains, mudslides this week in parts of Kenya. And we shall give you this story as well. Court declares Madewangara, that is Madewangara's 13.4 million shillings proceeds of crime, forfeited to the state. You have the story on page 3 of the Star this morning. Today you don't have the People Daily. It's a holiday. Tuliowa hepa kifo, that is what is on the front page of Taifa Leo. Waadhiriwa wengine wenye majeraha mabaya wasimulia jinamizi ilivyowapata na kuangamiza zaidi ya wakazi 48. And you can follow the story inside Taifa Leo this morning as well. Let's buckle down to some business where Kenyatta Equity, that is Kenyatta's Equity CEO, top in 63 billion shillings bank dividends. Banking leads Nairobi Security Exchange dividends bonanza despite dip in profits. Cooperative Bank and I&M boasts among top earners. You can read the rest of the story on page 2. An excerpt of it says that the families of Jomo Kenyatta and former Central Bank of Kenya Governor Philip Ndegwa and I&M Bank founder Suresh Shah and Equity Group Chief Executive James Mwangi are among the top beneficiaries of the combined 63.1 billion shillings dividends that Kenya's listed bank are set to pay. You have a story on page 2 as I've mentioned. Kenya dollar millionaires rent out their second homes. And you can see also related or a standalone picture there, Ruto visiting scene of Mai Mahiu tragedy. That story on page 5 of the Business Daily. Fresh system glitch holds passport services. Kenyans looking to obtain passports will have to wait longer after a system failure at Nyayo House, Nairobi, affected normal application, receipt and collection services, marking another painful moment for those seeking to travel. And Vivo cuts power used by 156 megawatts on solar plants. Online shoppers splash 87.3 billion shillings on electronics fashion products. And that story continues on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. Let's cross over to Uganda, where the splash is all about how the UK's sanction will bite Among and other ex-ministers. We have that story continuing inside on page 2. Volley here in a pushback. Parliament says London's motive of punishing the Speaker is because of her stewardship of the House to enact the anti-gay law. They say claims of accountability for Karamoja iron shits are a smokescreen since Uganda's probe into the scandal left Anita Among without charge. Now this story continues on page 2, and we have Parliament spokesperson here saying the iron shits have been used as a ruse to conceal the real, understated but clearly obvious reasons for the sanctions, which is the Right Honourable Speaker's stance on the recently enacted Anti-Homosexuality Act. It is important that foreign partners, including the United States, the United Kingdom, respect the sovereignty of Uganda. Also sanctioned former Karamoja Affairs Minister Dr. Mary Goretti Kitutu and her ex-junior, that is Miss Agnes Nandutu, who were indicted in August 2023 with, among others, loss of public property and conspiracy to defraud, and President Museveni dropped them from cabinet in March this year. That is a story that you can follow inside the Daily Monitor. If you're waking up in Uganda, how to excel in the crowded job market, you have all ideas splashed away inside the publication today. Follow that story. Also, the cyber homes, what affluent tenants expect in their houses, and we won't cut funding to health. That is what US is promising. This is on page 3 of the Daily Monitor. In Tanzania, government's mining policy shift as it eyes more benefits. The government said yesterday that it will no longer issue mining licenses to investors who lack comprehensive plans for value addition of minerals within the country. You can follow the story on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. All eyes on Samia as nation marks Workers' Day. With President Samia Suluhu Hassan gracing this year's Workers' Day today, workers expect she will announce another salary increase and issue a statement on the contentious new pension formula. This story on page 2 of The Citizen. And prior to the 2022 salary adjustments, the last time civil servants enjoyed a salary increment was in 2015, before the late Dr. John Magufuli came into office. Pension formula, the other thorny issue that workers hope the head of state will address, is a controversial new pension formula, which has featured prominently in Parliament's ongoing budget sitting, with the lawmakers roundly condemning it. You can follow the story inside the Citizen today. Polish envoy discusses EU's challenges, role for Tanzania. You have the full story inside the Citizen today, the magazine. All right, let's cross over to Rwanda, where apartment buildings are surging. Who is buying them? That's the probing question. Investors see Rwanda's real estate as a hotspot. They're now investing in apartment units, but who's buying them? The story continues on page 3. NEC warns presidential aspirants against forged endorsement signatures. And you can see the face of the chairperson there, Oda Kasizingwa, who warned aspiring candidates against forging signatures as they seek to fulfill essential criteria. Parliamentary and presidential elections are scheduled for July the 14th to July the 16th in Rwanda. You can read the rest of the details inside the New Times. And revised medical tariffs to come into effect in July. Our small livestock farming is enhancing lives in Ruhango district. That is on page 4 of the New Times. This week, the East African is carrying out this particular splash. South Sudan auditor queries use of IMF bailout cash. Audit report cites irregularities in award of tenders, taxation of government contractors, and accounting issues around the $114 million emergency fund. You have a story on page 6 of East African, and Somalia woo's East African investors. Also on the side, the history on sale in South Africa Heritage Auction. You can follow this story inside the East African. And relief as Uganda frees 32 Kenyans. Court martial releases hardest jailed over illegal arms. That is on page 3 of the East African. And also, Zambia turns to Uganda for maize. Prolonged dry spell blamed for shortage of grain. That story on page 30 and 31 of the East African this week. The Economist for you. How strong is India's economy? There's a special report there. How strong is India's economy? This is how it looks, the latest publication. And where next in the tech wars? Where next in the tech wars? The overlooked Trump-proof tiger, Ukraine, $61 billion. What will it buy? And has Taylor Swift peaked? That's also another question there. You can follow the story inside the latest copy of The Economist. All right, it seems also they're turning the focus on India. We have Newsweek as well with Unstoppable. This is Narendra Modi. How Narendra Modi is changing India and the world. That is the story that you want to follow. An exclusive interview there in the Newsweek. And the week as well, ready for takeoff. The Rwanda bill finally passes. And we shall be giving also details of this much later as we discuss this UK-Rwanda asylum deal. Now that we'll be having a cohort of migrants now arriving in Rwanda on voluntary basis. We shall be looking at that also with the panelists much later in the course of the program. But this is how it looks. The week, the case that could derail the Trump campaign. Right, you have the story on page 13, and the self-belief of a star producer. You can read all about her. And is a smoking ban a crackdown too far? Another probing question as well. All right, these are the editorial cartoons. Another Labor Day. Usual empty promises, long on speeches, little on delivery until next year. And you can see the conductor and the player, they're one and the same, right? The one who's conducting the symphony there is still Mr. Atwoli, and the one who's playing it is still Mr. Atwoli, according to Victor. This is what he has drawn today inside the Daily Nation. We have games as well in the Standard. It is Atwoli still. Yeah, workers are carrying him. That was in May 2001. In May 2024, we have the Hustler. The Hustlers now, they're the people who are carrying Atwoli. I'll leave it for you to decipher this. And also in the Star, Happy Labor Day. From tomorrow, all workers will receive a salary increment. That was then, right? Francis Atwoli, Chairman Kotu, year 1924. And Happy Labor Day. From tomorrow, all workers will receive a salary increment. This is now Francis Atwoli, Chairman Kotu. That is 2024. And of course, you know, that debate about the term limit of trade unionists as well. The chairs, the leaders there is on the floor. We have also Senator Eddie Okech with that particular Labor Relations Labor Relations Act right now that is seeking to put a term limit on some of its leaders as well. So since 1924 until 2024, it is still the same song. As you can see, he's still the one playing it. Long speeches, little on delivery, they say. And this is May the 1st. Today is Labor Day. All right, do one thing at a time. And while doing it, put your whole soul into it to the exclusion of all else. Do one thing at a time. And while doing it, put your whole soul into it to the exclusion of all else. This is Swami Vivekananda just advising you that you focus, put all your effort with a lesser focus on one thing at a time. I'll one at it. Do it all with all your soul. They always say, wherever you are, be there. That is what Chuck Swindoll says. Wherever you are, be there. and we are here. So all of our attention is here today. This is May the 1st. I want to introduce our panelists who are here. I mentioned them earlier. We are holding court this morning with Dr. Hassan Kanenje, who is director at the Horn Institute. Also, we have with us Professor Noah Midamba, who is a foreign policy and defense analyst. We have also with us Dr. Ken Mbongi, who is a historian and head of department at the University of Nairobi. We want to be joined by Professor Peter Kagwanja, but unfortunately he can't make it today because of a tragedy that happened in Muranga. Some of his relatives have been affected, so we just spoke this morning at 4 a.m. He was heading to Muranga because we know the landslides there also have affected a lot of families, and one of the families that has been affected by this, it is Peter Kagwanja's family. Right, we shall be linking up with him just to follow up and find out how things are panning out there. But allow me just to hear from Dr. Hassan Kanenje. Good to see you. Good morning.
Good morning, Dibal. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for making the sacrifice this numbingly cold morning when the blanket victory sometimes is very elusive. Right?
Oh, well, I like
twice.
that.
Should I really go and
I
for the
like
show?
that.
Yeah. So when I see you come up,
you're a good singer.
Yeah, you're here. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Right. So I can see Dr. Hassan Kanenje today also. Still, yeah, his eyes is on the red, heavy with sleep.
You know, if this past few weeks you've survived the floods, then you have to, count yourself lucky.
Indeed.
Yeah, because many people haven't, and if you've survived them, then they know a family member or a friend,
yes,
who may have been affected by it, one way or another. And I just want to say, our thoughts and prayers go up to the victims of the floods, and a lot of caution should be exercised, especially at this time, and perhaps also Kenyans should not, travel at night. Because you do not know when the road is going to be swept away. Mm-hmm. Whether you're using public or private, I think we should exercise extreme caution. Mm-hmm. And happy Labor Day, yes, to millions of Kenyans, the working poor. Mm-hmm. The working poor because the fortunes have not significantly been increasing. If you factor in the cost of life in much of the last, decade or so, and so I think it is a time and a moment of reflection. Both the leadership of the labor unions, as well as the government and the private sector, we need to really start thinking also seriously: are we really making progress with regard to increasing the fortunes of our people, or are people working so desperately, so hard, but still they can barely afford anything? A lot of wages that are given to some Kenyans, it's really despicable. In fact, I think recently when there was a discussion about the security personnel, getting an increment to around 30,000, and that thing, of course, is no longer, the case, or at least it was thrown out. I think it's unfortunate. Now, we're not going to say that every security company should give these people, 30,000. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, some of us who have security guards, that sometimes you're paying a company 40 or 50 or 60,000, mm-hmm, but the money that's actually going to the person who is doing the job is 8,000 or 10,000, and that's extremely unfair. And some of us thought it has to be a percentage of the overall amount, mm-hmm, of money that actually it's being paid to the company. And then those companies, should also pay taxes that is proportional to the money they're actually making, because that has not been happening, at least based on where I stand in my assessment. But these people are earning very little. There are a million of them, and they are supporting a lot of families, and it's just unfair that we're not moving, and that even Parliament is not seized with some of these matters, because they are the ones who represent the people, and they should be able to fight for wage increases, especially if an employer is making significant profits or amount of money. There is no justification why they should maintain you at 8 or 10,000 shillings and you have a family, yet the business is making 5, 6, 10 times as much. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is immoral.
But I think they're fully attuned to that particular matter. I think we had one or two legislators here who were saying, even the private securities regulators cannot just, start deducting or come up with that particular amount of money, or startly denying the trade unionists their remittances without the approval of Parliament. And they've not seen why they should go full steam ahead with these deductions, and the Parliament has not approved it.
Yeah, of course, you have legal aspects of it, but I think what is important is private security companies do not have a right to make 50,000 per person, but all they can give out is 8 or 10,000. It is immoral. They also have a responsibility, to the people who are actually working with them. So there's need to, for a way, and I want Parliament perhaps to focus a lot more on proportionality with regard to what they're making and actually what they're paying, instead of some of these legal histrionics that we're throwing here and there.
Right. Dr. Ken Mbongi, of course, you'll float the pecuniary embarrassment. And today is a day of pecuniary embarrassment for the civil servants, pecuniary embarrassment for even the private sector as well, because even as the cost of living is rising, it's not really in tandem with the increase that is there. All we can see sometimes, if maybe you're a legislator in these countries where you can have exceedingly beneficial effects as far as pushing the envelope is concerned, because they seem to be keeping at par with the inflation at the end of the day. But we can see from 2015, 2001, I mean, it has just been a blip of increase that is not really commensurate with the current state of the cost of living and the inflationary rate that is rising exponentially. Pecuniary embarrassment also for the lecturers. I can see we had the unions gang up together. They're threatening to strike. You can speak to that. Some of your remittances, the statutory remittances, have not been remitted as we know it. Your pension also is at risk. I think this is the day to speak. So speak up.
Dipal, our country is a paradox of sorts, especially if you look at the salaries, because those who work, those who toil to produce and pay taxes for the country actually earn the least, and those who work the least earn the more. Compare, and with the deepest respect for politicians, members of parliament, and members of county assembly, you cannot compare their productivity with people in offices, people in factories, and many other places. A country where the politicians and the leaders are the best paid as opposed to the producers, there is a problem there. There's a problem there. Mm-hmm. And you talk about pecuniary embarrassment. Yes, the current situation, and I'm very keen that the national, health insurance deductions have not come in yet. So I foresee a further raid into my payslip in the coming month or so, and that is going to make a bad situation worse in my view. And perhaps we might hear pronouncements today that will give hope to hopeless Kenyans, the ones that Marx described as the lumpens, the working class of this world, the burdens of beasts, if you wanted to look at it that way. So I think as a country then we need to have a very serious conversation, not just with the government, but also with the private sector, to see how we are going to help many of the workers cope with inflation, and their salaries are increased in such a way at least that promises them to keep their souls and bodies together, if you asked me. Mm-hmm. Because right now, the situation in Dipal is not very good. It's not very interesting. And if it is for those of us, at least who earn slightly better than, for example, the security guards that Dr. Anenche was talking about earlier, how about them? How about them? I just hope that the trade unions, both of professionals and non-professionals, need to really take on government on these issues very strongly and in a very collaborative way, so that we begin thinking seriously as a country about this. And it needs to be done in such a way that we also protect the industries that produce and create more jobs, because we don't want to go in the direction which will kill the goose that lays the golden eggs, as it were. So you talk about a good morning. I'm a bit hesitant, if only for just us being normal and saying good morning even when it's not a good morning. It's not a good morning in the country at the moment. There's tragedy, there's havoc, there's sorrow, my brother, everywhere. Families have been disrupted, property lost, lives lost. You know, we are a country in mourning this morning. So it's not a good morning in my view, if you ask me. Perhaps, besides, of course, talking about pecuniary embarrassment, we need to ask ourselves questions around our disaster preparedness as a country, which seems to me to be extremely wanting. And also our seriousness with the value of life. You know, you have seen guys literally driving into raging waters and drowning while others watching. You know, that's a tragedy. I saw a boat in Tana River. People being warned, don't go that direction, and they still go, and then they drown. Then we start praying to God. No, I think there's something amiss in our national psyche when it comes to looking at tragedy and appropriating tragic issues and events like those ones. Is it deprivation that makes us that desperate? What is causing that deprivation? That you see danger coming and you walk into it. People are being told to leave the low-lying areas. Of course, there are issues where they go, but then life is more important, in my view, than any other thing. People are building right on the rivers. You know, finally, as one Tanzanian was saying, the river will come home, and when it comes home, it will have to make you homeless. Because it is at home itself. So that's a tragedy that we are facing. You know, building in lowlands, in plains, in riparian areas, that's home for rivers, that's home for water. So when finally the water comes home, it has to make you homeless for it to be at home.
Indeed, of course, I thought also I should ask Nomi Damba, how Kenube is as well. Is he at home?
When Africans speak, you really have to take time to listen carefully to figure out what is it they're saying. I am happy, number one, to join you, Dubal, with my friend Kanenje Obongi, who's part philosopher, part political scientist, and this is a challenging time, Dubal, for our country, and our hearts and minds goes to people who are really suffering right now. They're homeless, their children are not going to school, their health care issues, transportation, which is at a standstill. This morning I had to divert on a normal way that we always face in order to get here. But they're bigger, they're bigger issues that is facing us on this Labor Day. That is, Africa is facing unprecedented hunger, malnutrition, issues that is going to impact everyone because, number one, climate change is here with us. There is no question about it. And if we are not prepared, we are going to be in a really dire situation. So we have extreme climate, we have extreme economic situation, we have slowed down of economy, and also the effect of COVID-19, which is still with us. And therefore, like Obongi articulated, we really need to be careful about this issue of salary because we have three classes of people. We have the rich, we have the middle class, and we have the lower academic. And these are the people that are working for this economy. These are the people that are upholding us. Dubala was horrified when I returned from the US, and I find that there is a lady that is providing tea, is called Tea Girl in Kenya. The colonialists were gone 60 years ago, and we still call a woman who has a family a tea girl. And Dubal, it took me 1 week to change all that within a very short time at the university so that people know. The woman was called the tea girl, became customer relation manager in my office. And we increased her salary substantially, such that now she is able to send her children to school. And so the issue Kanenje was also articulating is we need to uplift these people, the people taking care of our children, the people taking care of our security at home when we sleep. We need to know that they're people like us. I've seen some of my colleagues really mistreat these people like they're no human being. You can't talk with them, they cannot walk in the house. They're like foreigners, they're at the bottom. So you step on them. And the more we step on them, the more these people will rise up one way or another. It happened in Russia, it happened elsewhere, in Africa where we are. Today you are comfortable, the next day you are in a cage. So there is no room for you to hide. There is no wall we can create enough to keep us safe, because these walls are built by the people. They can tear them, they can cut the wire, they can do everything else. And yet there are Kenyans who are really dedicated to respect these people as human beings, who don't have walls, and they live safely. And therefore, we need to soul search about the future of the country. The trade unionists, particularly the bosses, cannot continue to fill their stomach and say they're fighting for the poor. That's not going to happen. We need to change. The investors are coming in the country. They need to maintain cost of living so that it is spread to everyone and not few. The cartel must go. Corruption must go. And the final thing, Kenya is not a poor country. If you take the 5 top gross national product in Africa, Kenya and Angola are going par in par. This year, Kenya is surpassing Angola, now to move back to number 4. So if we're the 4th largest gross national product economy, then what happened to these people that are downgraded? They're Kenyans, they're real people. And we have to balance approach the way we are looking at the future in terms of economy and politics.
Thank you, thank you. Dr. Kanenje, the issue of course, I've had none of you really commenting about the Labor Relations Act or the bill that is on the floor of the Senate being debated right now, especially on longevity of the chairman or the leaders who will be called to, could be the Federation of Kenya Employers as well as other trade unions as well. What do you think about it?
Well,
looking at that editorial cartoon that we had there before, I think
yes,
was it? I think that is hyperbole. Francis Atwoli, chairman, called to 1924 and 2024. Is it a century that he's trying to depict here? Then and now, if you may comment, that's Tony from the Star.
First of all, I think it's a little bit unfair to Francis. Okay.
People say that this is targeted.
He wasn't there in 1924. Okay. Two, had he been there, he would not be looking like that. That looks like Chairman Mao or something. Okay. Yes, he would not be looking like that.
But he's the king.
At all. Yeah.
So it's not a true reflection and depiction of Francis Atwoli.
No.
It looks like Chairman Mao.
It is not. Even how he's wearing. I understand. I think some of the discomfort that may come from labor movement leaders, being around for so long, but. Well, labor unions have their own way of doing things. Now, it also depends, from country to country. And if that has been their system, and it's not just that, actually, there are other labor unions, where people have been around for long. And I think one thing that has happened is sometimes the longer you are in place, the harder it is for you to leave, because almost everybody else who is part of that infrastructure is, somehow, you had a say in it, and so a lot of loyalty comes to you. It's not any different from monarchs and authoritarian, leaderships. But that is outside the province of my comments on here, because I also believe in democracy, and it is so hard for me to impose, certain limitations on people. If the labor movement themselves have agreed on that, because we cannot impose it on members. So if the members think there is need for change, then they're going to push for it. But if it has to come from outside, then it's a little bit intrusive. Prof, it's like the First Amendment,
Of course.
Yes. And so, because I'm also a liberal Democrat, I want whatever mechanism to be organic, that speaks to the interests of the union. It is true, when someone has been around for so long, sometimes they become, rather impervious to certain things. They may not really pay attention to things that are happening. But then
I saw that word was coming from retrogressive, but you...
yes. Of course, there's a lot of diminishing marginal, so you're no longer able to give any new ideas that can grow. But I think the members should be able to come with an organic way, and instead of it coming from Parliament per se, I would like if that was coming from outside, like, hey, we need certain reforms because I think we are tired, and maybe it's time to have the same way we changed the constitution. It did come from outside. We had to negotiate it as Kenyans because we realized the old order was out of order.
Indeed. All right, let's just follow up what is happening also in Mai Mahiu, where the death toll in the Kijabe Mai Mahiu tragedy stands at 48 after 2 more bodies were recovered on day 2 of the search and rescue operation in the area. The number of missing persons also shot up to 84, with the military expected to join the operation from, of course, today on the orders of the President William Ruto, who visited the area on Tuesday. And as Ken Gachui reports, families are in desperate search for their missing loved ones.
Kamushira village in Mai Mahiu remains in ruins after the Monday morning flash floods tragedy. These boulders and massive trees washed here now dotting what was until 2 days ago promising farmlands with magnificent homes. For nearly 36 hours, Jane Nyambura and her 4 children remained trapped inside her flooded house until they were rescued Tuesday.
Vile maji ilikuja kwenda kutoka, tukaona inakuja, hatuko na kujiokoa, lakini tukapumzika tu. Mungu ni mwema, alitulinda mpaka wakati tumefika sasa, tukapata nyinyi kwa tusaidia.
Tabitha Wanja and her sister Virginia Wamaitha are among the survivors. They however fear that they may have lost 8 relatives, 4 among whom have been identified in the morgue, with Wamaitha's 7-month-old daughter among 4 others who are still missing.
Watu wanne wako mochari, sijapata wawili, sijapata wanne. Na si watoto wa sister yangu, mmoja ako na wawili, huyo mwingine ako na wawili, huyo mwingine ako na mmoja, brother yangu ako na mmoja. Sasa nimeruhusu watu wazima wawili na watoto 6. Niliokolewa huko chini Mogas na mama yangu na mtoto wangu waine akashika kimuti akaokolewa. Sasa jana ndivyo hawa wengine waine walipatikana wakuwa maiti pamoja na katoto kangu niko na katoto kadogo kama 7.
Officers from the National Youth Service, NYS, and the Kenya Red Cross resumed the search, but the operation was not easy due to the weight of the obstacles, a vast search area, and lack of equipment.
Jile kubwa tuko nayo ni kwamba hatuna vifaa vya kufanyia kazi. Tunahitaji kama ni machines ambazo zinaweza kutuokotea hii mawe. Kuna mawe ambayo yamelala na pale yamelala kulikuwa na nyumba. Sasa hatujui kama kuna watu wako huko chini na tunawatafuta. Na at the same time kuna visigi vingi sana ya miti.
Tunakosa tu vitu kidogo sana kama pawaso. Kama sasa miti kama hizi unaona hapa tunatoa watu. Tumeona hata tunajaribu at least tunashika gari yenye tumekuja nayo. Tunajaribu kuvuruta hiyo mti iondoke ndio tutoe mtu ndani ya miti.
At around noon, they managed to recover the body of a middle-aged man who was covered by massive trees and identified as one who had been swept from his home a kilometer upstream.
Kaona ng'ombe ilikuwa imelala hapo, imekufia hapo. Nikaona kuna foods, yani inaitwa mguu. Nikashindwa hiyo mguu ilikuwa ya ng'ombe. Nikushibwa tu nikaona vidole. Nikajua hapa hakuna ng'ombe inaweza kuwa na vidole 3. Nikaona pana hii ni.
By the close of the exercise, 2 more bodies had been recovered, bringing the total number of fatalities to 48. The number of missing persons, however, rose to 84.
Here at Mai Mahiu, we have registered a total number of 293 displaced people. We have also recorded 84 missing persons. The number of positively identified bodies is now standing at 34.
The search operation continues tomorrow with the military expected to join. Ken Gashuhi, KTN News.
Meanwhile, President William Ruto on Tuesday visited victims of the Mai Mahiu flood tragedy, where he pledged support for the affected families. The head of state also directed that all members of the public residing within the flood-prone areas and area at the risk of, or he said they are at the risk of being affected by the raging floods, to move out within 48 hours, saying the military will help in rescue and recovery mission. And as KTN's Emmanuel Toh now reports, the government has pledged to cover the costs of settling the affected families.
With the death toll in the nationwide flood crisis nearing 180, it was time for the head of state to step out and witness the sad state of affairs in person. President William Ruto, who toured Mai Mahiu, Naivasha constituency in Nakuru County, where the ravaging effects of the floods are still fresh, directing that all those living in risky grounds to move out to safer grounds within the next 2 days.
Masaa 48 kutokea kesho, kila mtu awe ametoka katika hiyo sehemu. Na ni katika sehemu zote za Kenya, mji wa Nairobi, miji zile zingine, kwa sababu hatutaki tena kupoteza maisha ya wananchi.
The president announcing that government agencies had completed the process of mapping out the dangerous areas. The mapped out zones include settlements near dams and other water reservoirs, areas prone to mudslides and landslides, and riparian lands along rivers and other water courses across the country. Those who will be affected by this directive will be notified by the end of the day tomorrow, May 1st.
Kupoteza watu zaidi ya 170 sio jambo ndogo kwa kipimo ya aina yoyote. Na kwa sababu hiyo, lazima tuchukue hatua.
Before the trip to Mai Mahiu, the president chaired a special cabinet meeting to explore measures to mitigate the effects of the floods that continue to wreak havoc.
Serikali ya Kenya itahakikisha ya kwamba ile mali yote wamepoteza tutawarudishia. Manyumba ambayo imebomoka, serikali ya Kenya itajenga upya. Kama itabidi serikali inunue shamba ingine ndio waweze kuishi, tutanunua hiyo shamba.
In Nairobi, where the effects on people who live on riparian lands have been devastating, especially in the informal settlements along the Nairobi River, the cabinet directed that people living within the 30-meter riparian corridor also move out within 48 hours. The military, together with the National Youth Service, have also been directed to swing into action and help, especially in the search for those who have been reported missing.
The military has been mobilized, National Youth Service has been mobilized, all security agencies have been mobilized to assist citizens in such areas to evacuate, to avoid any dangers of loss of life or fatalities, and to avoid any other dangers.
The president had recently announced that the NYS will provide land to resettle those affected and provide humanitarian assistance. The president announced that the government will also cater for burial and hospital costs for the Mai Mahiu flood victims and others in the country. Emmanuel Toh, KT News, Nairobi.
Now, survivors of a Sunday night mudslides in Kaganjo village, Muranga County, which claimed 7 lives, are reeling from the damaging effects of the ongoing heavy rains. The mudslide swept through the village, carrying along the residents' houses. They are now dealing with the harsh reality of being homeless. Here's KTN's Clement Masombo with a tale of the mudslide survivors who now want the government to find them safer places to restart their lives.
2 days ago, Kaganjo village in Madhioya, Muranga County was jovial before a tragedy struck in the night, a mudslide that left 7 people dead. These are the remains of what used to be homes of families here. A section of this house had 5 occupants, out of whom 4 perished in the Sunday night tragedy.
Waine ni nyumba moja. Na wengine tuko tu moja nyumba moja. Sasa tunataka tu usaidizi. Vile tu mkubwa wetu Kangata ataona tu na Edwin watusaidie.
The mudslides carelessly swept through this village, claimed the lives of 7 family members and left tens of other families homeless. Winnie Wanjiru, a resident here, says they were left devastated. It left a dark, indelible scar.
Na sisi sasa tutapea ng'ombe nini? Sasa tunataka usaidizi hapa. Na kuna wengine hapa walizikwa na nini? Tuko na usuni sana, hata tunataka tusaidie tu juu sasa.
Another resident who is shaken but lucky to be alive is Lucy Wairemu. And like Wanjiru, her farm was washed away by the mudslides, with the locals now appealing for help from the government.
Nilisikia kisungu kwa mwili yangu. Nikaamuka nikasikia hakuna maneno ingine huko nje. Na ngoa ekegamba nene na ile kitu inagamba kwa kutoka juu.
A few meters from them, John Karimi is busy with his friends digging in the mud. The mission here is to recover some household items that were buried during the mudslide. This man here, John Karimi, lost 2 members of his family in the incident, his uncle and his aunt.
Kwa hivyo nimekuja ndio tusaidie, lakini tungeomba serikali kwanza ikuje itusaidie si pia juu jana tumeteseka sana. Sasa ni kujaribu kuona kama tunaweza okoa vitu chenye utapata chenye imebaki, kwa sababu hakuna kitu imebaki. Sasa ni ile kitu kidogo tunakusanya yenye.
As the heavy rains continue to pound the country, causing floods, mudslides, drowning and other devastating effects, the government continues to rally Kenyans to take precautions and stay away from danger zones.
But I want to urge the people from Madhioya and from the rest of the county who are in those areas that are prone to the mudslide, to make sure that they move to the higher sites, including using the schools since the dates have been reopened, until this rain subsides.
And therefore, in our constitution, there is an article called Article 223 that gives the leeway to government officials that they can spend money that is actually not budgeted, and they later come to parliament to ask for approval. So mimi ningewahimiza wale wote wanashikilia various departments, nyinyi tafadhali hata tumieni pesa haiko katika budget, kwa sababu ile tuko nayo sasa sio maneno ya kuulizana kama pesa inatosha.
Despite the warning, a majority say they do not have alternative areas to move to, and as such, they continue staring at a possible calamity with their fingers crossed. Clement Masombo, KTN News, Muranga County.
Now, countrywide, the relentless downpour has wreaked havoc with floods, waters submerging the regions while causing massive destruction in some areas. So far, the fatality rate stands at 169, according to the latest government figures. Meanwhile, leaders across the country want government to declare the floods a national disaster. And as Vera Mora now reports, the latest focus shows that the country should expect more rains.
According to Kenya Meteorological Department, the forecast over the month of May marked the cessation of the long rain season in several parts of the country, except for the coastal region and the western sector of the country, where rainfall will continue into June. April marked the peak of the long rain season over most parts except for the coastal region, where the peak is expected in May.
The western region is expected to receive occasional rainfall in May and remain generally dry in June and July. However, areas bordering Uganda and southern Sudan may experience occasional rainfall throughout the forecast period, where the forecast period is May up to July.
The outlook for May 2024 indicates that several parts of the country are likely to experience near average to above average rainfall. Occasional storms are also likely to be experienced.
As a ministry, we are investing substantially in strengthening the early warning capabilities of the Kenya Meteorological Department through modernization to ensure that we continue to increase the efficiency and accuracy of our climate information systems.
Meanwhile, one person died in Kinoo, Kiambu County after a mudslide swept away a house he had sheltered together with two of his colleagues. Elsewhere, high water levels in River Thiba in Mwea West, Kirinyaga County almost claimed the lives of 6 people after a pickup they were traveling in almost plunged into the river. In a harrowing development, the vital artery of the Kapenguria-Lodwar Highway has fallen victim of the wrath of floods. The heavy flooding left travelers on the highway stranded.
Na hii area yenye imekatika tulikuwa na shida ya bandits, ambapo hii barabara kama haijaundwa, mabandits wanaweza tumia hiyo nafasi ya kukuja kutuvamia. Sasa tuwaomba serikali tukimbilie etuundie hii barabara yetu tuweze kupita salama. Kwa sababu hii barabara iko under West Pokot near Turkana.
And in Embu, police closed the busy Embu-Meru highway at Ikongo Bridge following the sinking of soil on one side of the bridge. The police advised motorists to use alternative routes. Nicholas Maina, County Police Commander Embu, said they had informed Kenha to assess the road and give an advisory. Meanwhile, water levels at Masinga and Kiambere Dam have reached historic heights. Masinga Dam on Tuesday morning recorded its highest level ever, surpassing those recorded on 7th of May 2020. Kiambere Dam also recorded its highest level ever on the 26th, surpassing the previous historic level on the 29th of November 1997. The latest update by the government dated 29th, counties that have been adversely affected by floods include Nairobi, Tana River, West Pokot, and Homa Bay. Additionally, landslides and mudslides have impacted residents of Muranga and Nakuru counties. A total of 169 lives have been lost due to the ongoing floods. The mudslides in Mai Mahiu claimed 46 lives. Garissa reported 4 lives lost, while Sindo, Homa Bay, reported another 4 fatalities. A cumulative of 102 individuals have been injured across the affected regions. A total of 91 people are currently missing, with Mai Mahiu accounting the highest figure of 53 still missing. Garissa has reported 16 people. 30,000 households have been displaced and approximately 190,942 individuals have been affected by this natural disaster. Vera Mura.